Assalamu alaikum. We started our chapter about global innovation. We talk about the international product life cycle, global research and development network, and the international technology transfer. Now we are going to complete our chapter about global innovation with these two topics, the global knowledge management system and the intellectual property rights. First, let's start with the global knowledge management system. Knowledge is the ability to decode, understand, and give a meaning to facts and information. And in the corporate world, knowledge applies not only to techniques and physical sciences, but all the aspects of corporate behavior. So the knowledge management, how to manage the knowledge, the ability of a company to create, combine, and share knowledge among its members. So this is the general meaning of knowledge and how companies manage this knowledge among their members. So as we see in this photo, there is an explicit knowledge that we can see and the tacit knowledge that we cannot see or non-verbalized. The global research and development management is only one subset of knowledge-based strategies. So beyond the strict management of research and development, the strengths of global companies is their capability to create, combine, and share knowledge across borders. The scientists distinguish between two kinds of knowledge, the explicit knowledge and the tacit knowledge. Explicit knowledge or which is the verbalized knowledge that can be codified and explained verbally. Verbally means in writing or any symbolic language, and the tacit knowledge or the non-verbalized knowledge that cannot be codified and that can be transferred only by imitation, observation, or teaching, and so on. So the conversion of knowledge forms a knowledge spiral of organizational knowledge creation. You can see the socialization, externalization, combination, internalization. The socialization means the process of sharing tacit knowledge. This is called socialization. The process of sharing tacit knowledge through social interactions, training, and observation. Externalization, the process of indicating tacit knowledge into explicit concepts through metaphors, pictures, and theoretical formulations. Combination means the process of combining different elements of explicit knowledge into written and codified formats. Internalization, process of transforming explicit knowledge into tacit knowledge. When knowledge is internalized, it becomes part of the way of doing things, and its explicitness may be lost. So we have some opportunities and constraints of the knowledge management. The opportunities like the diversity of contexts, the variety of experiences, the economies of scope in knowledge creation, and also the economies of speed by not reinventing the wheel, and the constraints like the language. Global companies works in different countries with different cultures and languages and so on. Also, the differences in cultures and mindsets, the reactions of the inhabitants in this country, like the not invented here reaction, and the unwillingness and lack of motivation to share knowledge, the incentive system reinforcing local performances and not rewarding the global citizenship, and the nationalistic perspectives and lack of trust between the different units. So the global companies build management processes in order to overcome the constraints that we talk about and take advantage of the opportunities of knowledge management. Such a process is called transfer of best practices. So transfer of best practice consists in the systematization of exchange of internal practices developed in one unit and considered as superior to other units. Practices are the use of knowledge applied to all kinds of managerial activities, the running of customer service center, the management of product launch, the training of salespersons, or the control of accounts receivable. Transfer of best practice made less effective by causal ambiguity, which is the difficult to have a precise model of cause and effect relationship, especially for tacit knowledge, the lack of capacity for absorption by the recipient unit, which is not capable of interpreting the knowledge transfer and applying it, and third, the arduous relationships, as the tacit knowledge transfer requires multiple interactions between the different individuals. So now the useful tools or approaches in the knowledge management system. We can see here in details the business units and team leaders trained and experienced in the D&D practice. We will see what is D&D approach now. The socialization before teamwork, implying non-productive social interfaces, the transitional encounters, conferences, seminars, workshops, etc., with loose agenda to allow tacit knowledge to be shared. Also, the teams made aware of context through visits and education, the strong and accessible, open, user-friendly knowledge management platforms like the electronic libraries, case studies, chat rooms, etc. Also, the deadlines for project completion and the ULO pages, all these tools and approaches used for knowledge management in the Meta-National Corporation. So, the knowledge creation, sharing, and building. Uh, we mean by melding knowledge, which implies that the tacit elements of knowledge or the non-verbalized elements of knowledge are effectively assimilated and put into practice. So the metanational model is built on the interaction of two factors, the location factor and the context factor. By the location factor, we mean the place where knowledge is created, shared, and melded. And also the context factor, we mean the intellectual foundations underlying knowledge creation, such as the language, the mental mapping, the codes, and the implicit rules, etc. Now we can see the four different approaches of knowledge management system. We have the CNC model. CNC is for co-location and co-setting, which means the knowledge is entirely collocated with people sharing the same intellectual context transferred to other business units. So this is the classic use of the centers of excellence, in which one particular business unit is the creator of knowledge that becomes the best practice to be transferred. This eliminates the problem of tacitness at the level of knowledge creation, but not at the level of transfer. So the issue of stickiness is still present in this approach. The second one is a D&C model, or the dispersion and co-setting. Knowledge is created at different locations in this model under the leadership of expatriates who the personals who work overseas and who share the same intellectual and contextual backgrounds. They understand one another across cultures and they are able at the same time to adapt knowledge to local conditions and to share it, since the stickiness is reduced thanks to the common cultural background. This was the classic practice of multinational firms relying on a talented and mobile expatriate group. So the problem of this approach is the difficulty of taking advantage of the contextual diversity of country units and may lead either to an inflexible application of central recipes for or a complete acculturation of the expatriate managers, the going native syndrome. Third, the C and D model, which is the collocation and diverse setting. Model tries to take advantage of physical collocation of managers coming from various parts of the world and working on a common project. This is the idea behind the repatriation practices. This can lead to the Babel Tower's consequences. There's no Babel Tower, as we can see in this photo. It's just like a myth about the people who survived after the flood at the old times and so on, and they are punished by using different language and then cannot understand each other. So the consequences of this model, the lack of common contextual background of participants and the lack of explicit management of the cultural differences. Fourth, the D&D model, or the dispersion and diverse setting. This model of the multinational corporation is the one in which the creation, sharing, and melding of knowledge in a dispersed and diverse world is explicitly managed. So we have some major organizational tools of this model, like the trained and experienced management and staff, the socialization, transitional encounters, increased awareness of context through education, strong open user-friendly knowledge management platforms, deadlines for projects, yellow pages. As you can see, this figure can summarize the four models. We can see at the vertical axis the context of knowledge creation, sharing, and melding. There is maybe the same context or diverse context. And the horizontal, we can see the location, maybe the same location or distant location. For the C and C model, for example, the collocation and co-sitting, there is the classical collocation teams, knowledge creation, sharing, and melding in one place. So we can see the same location and the same context, and the possibility transferred later, the guiding principle of center of excellence. When we can see another example, the model of C and D, we have the same location but different contexts at the co-location and diverse setting. The knowledge creation in one place with the participation of managers detached from dispersed business units, and the second practice. Also, the third model, the D and C, there is a distant location but the same context in this uh, model. The virtual collocation, knowledge creation, and so on will be in several places, but with expatriate managers coming from same intellectual model. So this is uses the many or distant location and the same context. And the fourth one, D and D, we have different locations and different contexts, which is the dispersion and the diverse setting. The virtual team, the knowledge creation, sharing, and melding in several places with the ability for the company to create the conditions for effective sharing of tacit knowledge. Finally, we will move to the last topic, which is the protection of the intellectual property rights. As you know, we are talking about the global innovation and research and development, and all these types have a lot of secrets and so on. They have to be registered, protected, and so the protection of the intellectual property rights is a source of concern and sometimes barrier to practicing true global knowledge management, as the global firms are often confronted with imitation, reverse engineering, and trademark copies. As we can see, the types of the intellectual properties in the left hand in this schedule, and the types of infringement of these intellectual properties. First one, for example, the patents, which can be infringed by reverse engineering or straight copy. For example, in drugs, chemicals, mechanical and electronics products, and auto parts, and so on. Trademarks also can be infringed by straight copy or imitation with minor changes, like all branded products, as you can see here for these shoes of Nike and so on. The copyrights, which is the rights of creators. You can see in text, software, video, movies, training packages, all these kinds of copyrights. Also the industrial designs, is one of the types of the intellectual property, as can be infringed by the employee poaching and so on. So you are an employee working in some company. There is trade secrets. You can look at these secrets by the nature of your job and so on. So, like مثلا, the list of the clients, the marketing plan or strategic plan, financial information, industrial and management processes, all these trade secrets that employees can poach. Finally, the genetic codes also, they can be copied or employee poaching also, like the bioengineering and so on. So the infringement will be or is common for all types of intellectual property rights, as we see in the schedule, and the protection of this intellectual property have many methods and can involve any of the following the employees, the suppliers, the joint venture partners, the legal sanctions, as we can see in details here. The parties involved in the protection of intellectual property rights. We can see the employees, for example, can be protected by restrict disclosure of intellectual property to selected employees. Also, we can require key employees to sign individual secrecy agreements or to establish a strict catalog of level of confidentiality or keeping the intellectual property in secure location or educate the employees on the rationale and the consequences of infringement and regularly interview the employees or prepare handbook listing items to be protected and what to do in case of leakage suspicion or give recommendations about best practice. This is for the employees. Also the suppliers of the company may be involved also in the protection of intellectual property rights. For example, making non-disclosure agreements between the company and the suppliers, or establish rules about what can and cannot be disclosed. Third, we have also the joint venture partners. You have a company and have another partner. Maybe there will be a lot of secrets and so on. So you can protect by different methods. By to be specific in the joint venture contract while doing the contract, to be specific in the items or articles of the contract. To use the black box approach when technically feasible, or screen partners' employees. And finally, the legal issues, which can be protected by the lobby governments or use the diplomatic channels to support the actions and engaged in legal action as soon as possible, even if the legal context is unfavorable. Now we finished our topic about the global innovation. We explained the international product life cycle and the global research and development network, the international technology transfer, global knowledge management system, and finally the intellectual property rights. You can see at the end of the slides some important keywords like the best practice, center of excellence, the collocation, the combination, explicit knowledge, externalization, innovation, and so on. You have to study these terms very well from these slides or from the textbook or any other external sources. And also these learning assignments will be more useful for enhancing your knowledge. Thank you, and see you in our next lessons, in our next chapter, inshallah. And goodbye and good luck.